Hey there, BCC. Another video from me, but don't worry, it's so close. We're going to be back in person again. I think we have another week next week where I'll do a video for you, and then after that, I will literally see you in the playground. And I'll probably still be doing videos for Connect, but at least you will be able to see each other, and it won't feel as distant as it has felt. I'm so excited to be there with you on our grounds, hanging out together, eating lunch together, laughing together, doing class together. Not that I'm really in many of your classes, but it'll be great to be there. Now, I have a question for you. What is your name? that might be the easiest question that you're ever asked. I remember on some tests, I don't know if teachers still do it, on some tests you used to get when I was in primary school, you get half a mark for writing your name correctly at the top of the page so they knew whose test it actually was. But what is your name? It's a question that you get asked all the time when you meet new people. And it's a pretty simple question, really. They're saying, what did your parents name you? And that's not very complex, but names actually do kind of say a lot about us, right? And I mean, I don't imagine you've ever named a person. Maybe I'm assuming you haven't, or maybe your parents, when they were having a kid, let you name the kid or something like that, if you're really lucky. But naming a person is incredibly difficult. When we had each one of our kids, Harper, Lara, and Leo, one of the most stressful things for me, at least, because I wasn't actually birthing those kids. I wasn't holding them in my body, nor was I expelling them from my body at any point. So one of the most stressful things for me about having a kid was having to come up with a name for them, because you felt so much pressure. This was the name that they were going to have presumably forever. This was a name that was going to communicate something about them. And so you kind of didn't want the name to be too common. This is how I felt anyway. I didn't want it to be too common, but nor did I want it to be way too outrageous and that people would not even kind of see it as a name. So we're trying to pick between these two extremes, these very really common names or names that are way too uncommon. At one point I suggested to my wife that we name our first daughter Genesis, which I thought was a fantastic name. There's a famous woman, Genesis Rodriguez, and I was like, we should name her after her. And Kristen said, that is way too Christian, bitch. It's not even a real name, she thought. But I love the name Genesis. My other suggestion was Honey. I wanted to name our first daughter Honey, and that got shut down pretty quickly. It's a stressful thing because a name is what identifies you, and it says something about you, and you want that name to mean something. A name can kind of indicate the kind of place that you're from, there's kind of middle class names, and there's rich names, and then there's ghetto names. And people name their children and name themselves to kind of indicate where they're from. You can have names that kind of indicate something about you, a characteristic or a virtue that you want to embody, or at least your parents wanted you to embody. I'm not saying there's any correct way to name people. I'm just saying giving someone a name is something that's incredibly powerful. And what we see in this passage that you would have read, hopefully, together before you're watching this video, is Jesus actually names or renames someone. He takes a fisherman named Simon, whose brother is Andrew, and he renames him. But he doesn't name him, to do with his past, things that happened in his past, nor does he name him to do with where he is from. He names him about something that Jesus hopes he will be into the future. Or more accurately, that Jesus knows that he will be. When Jesus renames Simon Peter, and Peter means stone or rock, what he's doing, I think, is he's calling Peter to a future. He's saying something wonderful. He's saying, you are not defined by where you are from the town that you grew up. You're not defined by your job. You're not defined by being a fisherman anymore. You're not defined by your upbringing, by your parents who named you Simon. Those things don't define you anymore. What will define you is your connection to me. And what will define you is what I'm calling you to, which is to be a rock, to be someone of courage, to be someone that's strong, to be someone that's powerful, to be someone that joins this new thing that I'm doing in the world, the kingdom of love and grace and peace. That's what Jesus wants for Peter. And that's what he wants for all of us. John Calvin, actually, when I was reading Calvin on this passage, he said, really, all our names are Peter. And he said this. He said, when you read this story, the story of Jesus calling his first disciples, what you'll see is that everyone, no matter where you're from, no matter what you've done, no matter what your history, like everyone is welcome here in Jesus' home. Everyone is welcome to go with Jesus back to where he is staying, as the disciples say. Everyone is welcome. And when you come and when you stay at his home, it's like he gives you this new name, and that name is Peter, or that name is Rock, or that name is Stone, and you become this stone that Jesus uses to build his people, to build his kingdom of peace and love and grace. If you look at the passage, there actually seems to be a fixation on where people are from. So James tells us that Philip and Andrew are from the town of Bethsaida. Now this town Bethsaida, later in Jesus' ministry, he will pronounce a woe on it. He's basically saying it's the worst possible place that you could come from. He says, "Woe to you, Bethsaida! It'll be more bearable for, Sodom and Gomorrah on Judgment Day than for you, because if the miracles I'd done there." He woes them. He says, this is the worst possible place that you could come from. But Philip and Andrew and Peter and Nathaniel, they're all asked to come, to follow Jesus, to get a new name. They've been called to something greater than where they are from. So I don't know where you're from. I don't know if you're proud of where you are from. I don't know if you're a little bit embarrassed about where you're from. I don't know whether you like to tell people your postcode, whether you want to get it tattooed on your knuckles, or whether you're embarrassed about it. It doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter where you are from. You are welcome in Jesus' home, and he will give you a new name. A name not about the things that you have done in your past. A name not about all the mistakes you've made. Have you ever got a nickname to do with a mistake that you made? I think I told you the story of a kid in first day kindy at my school, Mount Camry Public School, who was standing there. Is when I was in kindergarten. I must have been in year 2 or 3 or something, and he was in kindy, and he was standing there, and while they were doing roll call, we used to do roll call out on the paddock. I literally went to a country school, so it was a paddock, but this kid, Matt was his name, while they were calling the roll out, he pulled his pants down to his knees for some unknown reason. And from that day forward, he was Pants Down Matt. That was what he was called for the rest of his primary school. I don't know if you've been given a name because of the biggest mistake that you've made. Whether you've been named things, nicknames, whether people know something about you and they've used that to make you feel less than and named you in that particular way. Jesus is saying, however you've been named, whether it's because of where you've come from, whether it's because of what you've done, whether it's the name that your parents gave you, he's saying that doesn't matter to me. You're welcome. You're welcome with me. And if you need it, I'll give you a new name, a new calling, a calling to be a rock. Are you with me? I think this passage in a way gets to the heart of what it is to follow Jesus. There's this moment right at the beginning where, John's disciples are with John and they see Jesus, and then John says, "Behold the Lamb of God." And the 2 disciples go with Jesus. And Jesus says, "What do you want?" Which is such a strange thing to say, but it's interesting. And they say, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "where are you staying?" And Jesus says, "Come," he replied, "and you will see." So they went and they saw where he was staying, and they spent that day with him. It was about 4 in the afternoon. I love that details about 4 in the afternoon. I think what the author is saying is it was so late they should have been going home, but they didn't. They stayed with him anyway. What is it to be a Christian? It's to want to stay with Jesus. Knowing that you're welcome no matter where you're from, no matter where your past, your background, no matter your name, you're welcome. And it's saying, I want to stay with you. Let me stay with you. Let me learn from you. Let me hear from you. Let me receive your love and grace so that I can give love and grace to others. Now, that's a different thing, isn't it? And what you see all the way through this passage is when someone stays with Jesus, it's like this little fire that starts in them. And they start telling other people that they should stay with Jesus. And pretty soon you have this cool little collective of disciples who are staying with Jesus, because staying with Jesus is the safest and most beautiful place that you can be. If you were Nathaniel, if you were Andrew, if you were Philip, if you were Peter, if you were James, if you were John, if you were Devonte, if you were Meredith, if you were Elizabeth, if you are Lee, if you are Robert, whatever your name, wherever your name comes from, you are welcome to stay with Jesus. And when you do, it will completely transform you into the human you were created to be. Can't wait to see you soon, my wonderful BCC friends.